Hi, and welcome to Conductor, where we are two sisters on a mission to amplify women's voices on the podium.
Join us as we interview leaders in the field of choral music, share resources, and build a community for current and future teacher conductors, all while exploring the gender divide. I'm Kira Starr.
And I'm McKenna Stenson, and we are Conductor. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Conductor. We are absolutely thrilled to have Jennifer Rosenblatt on the podcast with us today. Thank you so much, Jen, for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Here is just a little bit about Jen. She is a third-generation native Floridian and the CEO and co-founder of Music Spoke. Like Etsy for composers, Music Spoke is building the world's largest marketplace for artist-owned sheet music. In second grade, Rosenblatt won first place in the Pee Wee Walk Trot competition of a Western riding horse show. In middle school, she elected to take woodshop for all 3 years. In high school, Rosenblatt was a mathlete, president of the Latin Club, and the slowest member of the swim team.
As an entrepreneur, Rosenblatt has been turned down by several founder programs and kicked out of one. She has been rejected by national and international investors. One local investor was so uninterested, he wouldn't even bother to have coffee with her. In her spare time, Rosenblatt enjoys making wonky pots, animating stickers for Instagram stories, which we can attest are fabulous, and playing the New York Times spelling bee. She lives in Kansas City with her husband and co-founder, Kurt Connect, and their 2 dogs. Let's welcome Jen.
Thank you, ladies. Yeah. So when you told me I had to write a bio, I was like, oh, not again. And I mean, the truth is we've all done stuff, right? I've done stuff. I've won awards. I've been through programs. And I understand, like in an academic setting, that you need a CV as big as the Groves Dictionary, but it doesn't really do anything to prove that you know what you're doing or you have some certain expertise in a certain area. So I just wrote that fun little bio based off of one that my husband had written a few years ago.
And I'll say it's really fun because I learned more facts about you, I think, from this sort of like manifested bio, just about like Jen, the human being, which I absolutely love. And also I think, because I've read Kurt Connect's fake bio, which is on the internet, which we can gladly share, but it's so great to hear about the times that things didn't work out. Because we never talk about them. And that's something that we here on the podcast like to bring up because not everybody just woke up and had a CV the length of the Groves Dictionary because that's not possible.
Right. And you're right. We seldom talk about the things that did not go well, right? Except that's when we learn. We learn from our mistakes and we learn from experiences and we grow from the pain of those uncomfortable experiences versus just listing off the awards and the programs and the funding and the organizations and the speaking engagements. We've all done all of that, right? Great. Good for us. We've also all had failures and flops and mistakes and hard times. And you really do learn more from those hard times than you do from, the award-winning shiny moments.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think we are continuing to try and spread that message on here. And I loved that your bio was just like, hey, this is actually who I am. And here are some things about me. And just a great reminder that we are all simply human beings walking on this earth and just doing our very best. And that means not everything is going to work out for us at all times. And we may not know what that closed door is going to lead to, but it might be pushing us in the correct direction. So thank you, Jen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also super curious about woodshop, Jen. So if we have time at the end, would love to circle back to the 3 years of woodshop. But in the meantime, we want to know, we've already learned so much about you in 4 minutes. We want to learn more. So Kira, do you want to take it away?
Yes, Jen, we tend to ask the same 3 questions, and we've modified them a bit to hear specifically from you. So we were wondering if you would tell us a bit about your upbringing and your relationship with music.
Yeah. So, um, I grew up in a conservative synagogue, and it's different. Most people don't know, like, it doesn't have to do with politics, conservative or liberal. It's the idea of conserving the traditions of the past with an eye towards modernity, which basically means that I did not grow up with musical instruments in worship. We did not have music written out in the prayer books, and everything tended to be just a little off key. So I don't have that sort of like church music background. Like, I didn't grow up singing in church. I had a terrible experience in third grade. This is shout out to all the music educators out there doing a good job. But in third grade, we had to audition for choir. We had music class, but we had to audition for the choir. And we had to sing the Star Spangled Banner to audition for the third grade choir. And that was just too high for me, and it didn't happen. So my friends went to elementary choir, and I didn't. I grew up doing theater, just not musical theater. Um, I had like 6 piano lessons once and 2 flute lessons once, and that's about it. So mostly I went to rock concerts. My mom started taking me to concerts in like 6th grade. I think I saw the Beach Boys and Elton John, my first concert. We went to the Moody Blues and the Fix and Heart. I've seen Rod Stewart a million times because that's my mother's favorite. So yeah, pretty much my upbringing in music was pop and rock and, disco. But definitely, we had like the school field trips to the Florida Orchestra and things like that. But I did not grow up musically inclined.
I love it. Well, first of all, I love that story because I think that a lot of people can relate to that. And not everybody had this magical Sound of Music experience as a child. And I think the fact that your third grade teacher used the Star Spangled Banner as the audition piece is extremely developmentally inappropriate.
Yeah. Whoa.
And
there's so much to unpack.
What a difficult song to sing for anybody at any time, but especially you in the third grade.
Here I am, however many decades later, and I still remember Mrs. Bickle, not naming names, and I still remember like the song we had to sing in the whole situation. So that was definitely not like a very positive experience for me.
But I also think it's really cool. This is one of the first times I think on the podcast we've really talked about rock and pop and the influence of going to concerts growing up. And I grew up in Kira, and I grew up maybe Kira a little less so because she was braver than I was.
I was cool. I went to a lot of concerts.
Kira was cool, but I didn't really go to concerts until I was dating some guy, and it was like his musical world was so different from my musical world. Like, there was screaming bands like Brand New and like May and like all this alternative rock and punk and stuff. And I remember he was like, you have to go to a music festival. Like, if you want to be a musician, you have to go to a music festival. And I was like, I do, like, I'm in the marching band and I'm in choir and I'm a section leader and I can play 2 parts on the piano. And I was like, why would I need to do that? So I went, and it was probably the most fun musicking. Like, it's one of those formative memories from my entire, I'd say, like up through 18. And I had the best time. I heard like 16 bands in one day, and I crowd surfed, and no regrets. And it was so great. And I missed out on some things. So I'm glad I did that one at least.
McKenna's one moment of letting loose as a youth.
There were at least 3. It's fine.
But yeah, I mean, the concerts that I went to with my friends in high school, like, I loved country music, but we also went to the 930 Club, and I saw all of these incredible people. And I remember going to like the Sweet Life Fest and seeing Explosions in the Sky and Kid Cudi, like, all in one concert. And I don't know, I think we forget in the classical world how important those things are and how important it is to remain connected to the pulse of what people are listening to. Because I'm actually in a dance class this semester, and my professor is amazing. I use dance as a loose term because I'm not a dancer if we're talking about the things that we're not succeeding in. But he was just saying, like, the music that we listen to and how we respond to it tells a story of what's going on in the world. And he was like, so listen around you, because like things are kind of dark right now. And that we need to be aware of that. And I was like, oh, so poignant. So yes, thank you for talking about the music that majority of people on this earth listen to.
And now a quick word from our sponsors. This season, we are featuring a fierce lineup of women composers found in the Music Spoke marketplace. At Music Spoke, composers receive the majority of the proceeds from sales, retain control over their own works, and all scores are available immediately as digital downloads. At Music Spoke, they do not simply publish pieces of music. They find composers and give them the tools and freedom to promote themselves.
I know well that it pleases me, even though everyone says that it's very improper for a lady to plead her own cause with a knight and make him so long a sermon all the time.
You just heard Castellosa's Song by B.E. Boykin. Check out her works today on musicspoke.com and conducther.com/sponsors. And we're back.
Jen, you had this background, and although you never participated in music in that, like, what we consider the formal way, maybe at school, obviously music has always been something that you've been passionate about and enjoyed listening to and being a part of. And then now you run a music business. You run Music Spoke, which is one of the leading, music producing and publishing businesses in my opinion, like the world, but I guess the United States. We'll stick with that for this moment. But can you talk about what event was inspirational for you to start Music Spoke, and maybe a little about how that journey manifested?
Yeah. So my husband is Kurt Connect. He is my co-founder. We actually went to high school together. I know. I can tell you a fun story about that because we didn't actually know each other in high school. Well, I'll just tell it now as an aside, because this also ties into music experiences. I was a sophomore when he was a senior. And one day there was a flyer up on the wall about this piano recital that was going to take place on a Thursday night. And that was great for me because Thursday night was New Wave night at this club called Off Limits, which was this 21 and under club out in Brandon. I'm from Tampa originally. And so I took the flyer home to my mom and I said, Mom, my friend Becky and I, we're going to go to this piano recital at the school tonight. And then I'm going to spend the night at Becky's house. And she was like, oh, that's great, honey. And then we totally ditched and went to the dance club instead. Later on, after we met and got married, my husband is a composer. And he was fortunate to get published in his early 20s. And we thought, like, published composer, this is so cool. Surely fortune and fame must follow. It's not really the case. So first, traditional publishers, when you get published with them, they take copyrights away from the composers. So they no longer own or control their music. They do this in exchange for 8 to 10% royalties. At least back then it was. I don't even know what the going rates are anymore. And then you don't know who's purchasing or performing your music. You just get a statement and a check once a year. It's a black and white piece of paper with numbers typed across. So you don't know who's buying your music. You have no way of verifying the accuracy of those numbers. It was a frustrating process for a long time. As things progressed, like the internet was invented and we had access to more tools as creators, as marketers, as entrepreneurs, some of those barriers started to come down. And there was a lot more moving towards self-publishing in the music world. And I had a background in graphic design and printing. So I'd actually already set some of Kurt's scores that looked just like any other octavo you might buy at a music store so that we could sell them off of his website. And he was going to a national conference, a national ACDA conference down in Dallas in 2013. I was running a marketing company that I had started at the time. And I went to update his website because I only ever did it once a year when I went to conferences. And I thought, we have links on his website that say, just email me if you want to buy this score. Email me. I was like, we live in the 21st century. Let's add some e-commerce to your website. Like, click here, buy the score. We'll ship it. We'll figure it out. But just to, it looks a little more professional than email me if you want to buy it. And so I started looking at other composers' websites out there just to see what they were doing in terms of self-publishing. And I realized that nobody really knew what they were doing. Everybody was trying to do something, but composers are not marketers. They're not coders. They're not salespeople. And so it was really the idea of like, well, if everybody is experiencing this problem at the same time, instead of just fixing it one time for my husband, how can we fix it for all the composers out there and have one place that is a centralized hub, hence the spoke, a centralized hub for all things related to self-published music, which we like to call now artist-owned sheet music. So that's kind of just like dipping toes into how I got into the music business.
I love that so much. I just think one thing that you said really stuck out to me, Jen, which was just, oh, you don't have a way for people to buy your music? Cool, let's just figure it out. Like, I just think that I've only known you for a short time, but that absolutely comes through in everything that you talk about and everything that you do. You just are somebody who's like, oh, this needs to be done. Okay, we're going to figure out how to do it. And also I'm going to help you figure out how to do it. And I'll tell you how I did it. You're an innovator and you're a doer. You're somebody who gets the job done, even if it's something that you don't have experience in, which I feel like is such a beautiful personality trait. And like Kurt Connect is so wonderful and so lucky to be married to you. Because I think having you as a business partner is crucial and instrumental to the success that you both have seen.
It's definitely part of the secret sauce of Music Spoke is the fact that I'm not a musician, right? That I am a business person and I am a very strategic thinker. When we were first coming up with these ideas and just Kurt and I talking through things, and it's funny the way that you put that because it's true. Kurt would say, but that's not how it's done. And I would say, well, then let's do it. Right?
Right.
There's the is versus the ought. Just because something is this way doesn't mean that it ought to be this way. So let's try something different.
Hold on.
See what happens.
That just needs to be a t-shirt right there. Because that's something that I think in the music world is and beyond, the dissonance is just so strong with that. The is versus the ought, like, oh, we always do it this way, or it's only ever been done this way. But why? Right. And just to really like take a look at something with an objective point of view so that it's not from an emotional standpoint. Obviously people are sometimes connected to their systems, but let's just be creative and think through how we can move into a new direction that simplifies and solves the problem, like Kira said. And just to clarify, so that piano recital that you missed was Kurt's recital. Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to circle back there.
Yeah. I'm sure he'll fact check everything I say. I call it a concerto recital, but I don't know what it was. I have no idea what it was because I didn't go.
I would not have gone either. Just telling you as a fellow sister over here.
I would have been there. Sorry, Kurt. I also think it's a testament to you, Jen, about not only having this entrepreneurial mindset and obviously depth of background because you've run many a business before Music Spoke, but understanding of the market and the product and the need. And that's something that I think sometimes is really hard to not understand if you're not a musician, because it's such a weird, nuanced field. And so obviously your pulse on that is so clear and direct and on brand. So I would just give yourself a little bit more. We give you more musical credit than you think you have.
Well, thank you. And some of that was not like an immediate thing. Some of that is part of the process, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I think this gets into a later question, but some of that is part of the process of, I have this idea. Now what do I do? And there is a process. There is a process about doing customer development, about figuring out what your market size is and, why this problem, why this team, why right now? And what is your go-to-market strategy? And just honestly just talking to a lot of people and asking them what their problem is and asking them what they want and then giving it to them. So, even though I recognized that everybody was struggling with the same type of thing, I had no idea what I was getting into when I first started.
Well, you did it. I mean, mission accomplished. Our last and kind of brief question for you before we dive into the meatier things is you've mentioned your husband, Kurt, your mom who was influential in your life. And is there anybody else who you'd like to name or just give props to for helping you or being influential in your journey to get to where you are?
I think, again, like when we had started coming up with this idea and we were talking through things with each other, it was helpful for me. I was running a service-based business at the time that I had started. So like a local marketing, graphic design, business cards. And that type of business, you go to chamber functions and you go to networking functions and you meet people and you have coffees and you try to build relationships in person and try to solve whatever those needs are you're trying to solve in person. For this type of business, I recognized from the beginning was my customers were never going to walk through my door. I was never going to have a storefront. I was never going to see my customers at a chamber of commerce function. That's not what this type of business was. And this is more of a quote unquote products based business, or rather a scalable business. And so I started just talking to people in my network, in my community, in my business community at the time, who I knew had some ties to the startup community, had dabbled in it, had some ideas. And so just finding people to talk to and talk through the ideas with. On the music end of things, honestly, Mike Scheibe was one of the first people we talked to about this idea. And Mike was Kurt's editor at Walton. And we've known Mike for a really, really, really long time. And he's always been great. And he was one of the first people, musically or otherwise, that we talked to about this idea. And we just kind of talked through it back and forth. He was visiting, we were in Lincoln, Nebraska at the time, and he was visiting guest conducting at UNL or clinicking or whatever it is you guys do. So we had coffee with him and talked through it. And he was like, yeah, this is a great idea. What's it going to take to get it started? And we're like, we don't know. And he's like, go figure it out. I'm like, okay, cool. And it's also funny, like when we first had this idea, I told Kurt, I was like, Kurt, don't tell anybody about this. Don't tell anybody about this. We can't talk about it. It's quiet, top secret. And I had a conversation with one of my sister-in-laws about it one time. I have 3 sister-in-laws, Kurt's sisters. And I was like, yeah, this is the idea we have. But I told Kurt he can't talk to anybody about it. And she's like, why not? And I said, well, like, what if it doesn't work? And she said, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like, somebody's going to say you tried this thing and it didn't work. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. All right, let's talk about it. So then I started talking about it to like anybody who would listen, because there was so much that I didn't know that I didn't know. I had this whole idea for a business model that I didn't even know already had a name. And I only found out by talking to people and realizing they knew more than I did and could give me pointers along the way and books to read and ideas to think about that just added more and more to our solution.
That's amazing. And so interesting to hear you say and continue to say, I think to Kira and I, like, talk to people about your ideas, talk to them, because I feel like every time I have to describe Conductor or the mission of the organization, the more coherent it becomes for me and like the more potent it becomes. And that advice has been really helpful for us. And I know for anyone out there who's thinking about their own potential business or branding or marketing, everything that Jen just said is so applicable. So we're ready to dive in because
I have 2 more points to that short question, though.
Oh, go. Sorry, hit me.
You talked about, like you just said, the more you talk about it, the like sort of more cogent your pitch becomes.
Yeah.
It's your elevator pitch. That's what you're working on. If you were on an elevator with a VC, an investor, a potential board member, somebody you wanted to interview on your podcast, and you have 10 floors to pitch them the gist of what you're doing, like what is that? Your elevator pitch gets you to the next date, gets you to the next meeting. That was one. And then the other was, so like when it comes to talking about ideas, I used to think like, well, if we talk about it, somebody might steal the idea. Well, after you've been in it long enough, take it, steal it, fine. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is everything. I will have other startups that I mentor or want to talk or have a conversation, and they want to sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and I'm like, I don't have time to take your idea. I don't need an NDA because I don't have time to take your idea. So let's just talk. Execution is everything.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Hello, this is Sandra Snow, Director of Choral Programs at Michigan State University and Artistic Director of Mirabai. Mirabai is partnering with the Denver Women's Chorus to present Storytellers, a workshop unlike any conference you've been to. For the first time, leaders in choral music education will partner with members of GALA, the Gay and Lesbian Association of Choruses, to bring a workshop that blends the experiences of musical activists and classroom trailblazers. The Storytellers Conference is designed to improve your rehearsal and ensemble leadership through sessions that promote inclusive pedagogy, cultural responsiveness, and a new lens through which to view the conductor's role. Featured guests will include composer and singer Moira Smiley, and all attendees will be able to see Mirabai in concert. Session presenters will include collegiate educators from across the country and gala chorus leaders who are working as community activists. When we come together to listen to one another's stories, we all grow. Storytellers. Listen, connect, expand. To register, see storytellersdenver.org.
Hello, everyone. Jocelyn Hagan here. I just wanted to let you know that the Compose Like a Girl podcast has officially launched. Listen as I interview celebrated composers Sarah Kirkland Snyder, Chen Yi, Dale Trombor, Angelica Negron, Rina Esmail, and more. I'm also hard at work on the next batch of scores in the Compose Like a Girl choral series, distributed by Graphite Publishing. You can help me bring these new pieces to life. I'm always seeking choral ambassadors to perform these new works by emerging composers. If you're interested, please reach out to me, Jocelyn Hagan, via my website, jocelynhagan.com, or social media. I look forward to hearing from you.
And we're back.
And again, I think I'm excited for our listeners to hear from you, Jen, just because you have this incredible brain that operates outside of the musical sphere, and you just throw things into conversation like, oh yeah, McKenna, that's just your elevator pitch. As someone who's married to also a non-musician, it is like so refreshing to have conversation with people who are like, well, yeah, like you just go in and you do that. And I'm like, oh, what? I feel like there's a real discrepancy sometimes between the way musicians operate and the way, frankly, just the rest of the world is operating. And sometimes the rest of the world is ahead of us. And it's so important for us to stay in touch with that and say, okay, we're not using LinkedIn as a music community. Why? Like, just there are things out there that we just don't do that everybody else truly does. So I love hearing from you, and I'm so excited for our listeners to get to know you a little bit. Which brings us into our next question for you. All right, McKenna, do you want to ask this one?
Yeah, sure. I just think that we're in a really unique time in history where being multidimensional is sort of a new expectation. And I know whether you're a public school teacher or working at the collegiate level or, wherever you might be in your musical career, these days, things go beyond what you are teaching in the classroom. There's an expectation to have a social media page, to have a newsletter, to have graphics for your choir Instagram or whatever it might be. And so what Kira and I have been seeing is that musicians are just getting more creative in entrepreneurship in general. And so we wonder, what advice would you have to someone who's just getting started on this journey? And maybe where do you even begin?
I think with entrepreneurship, I think it always starts with a problem. And I think the best sort of, entrepreneurs or businesses or whatever, it starts with a problem that you notice around you, right? It's not, I am not the one to go, pick something. I am not the one to go to a construction site and tell them how to solve their problems and improve their performance. I don't know anything about construction. I did take wood shop for 3 years, and I do like to build things, but not like construction sites, right? So it starts with like noticing problems that are around you that you deal with every day. And especially, I mean, this includes as a musician, as a music educator, what are the problems that you see around you? And then what are the problems that, is this a problem that other people are experiencing? How many other people are experiencing this problem? If you are up at midnight Googling, what answers are you Googling for, right? There is some problem out there that somebody is Googling the answer to at midnight. What is that? That's what we call a pain point. That is a pain point in somebody's life. And so how can you solve that pain point? So you find the problem, and you might find 20 different problems. You might find 200 million problems. Let's be real, right? And some of them you can solve by like just building a spreadsheet or, whatever. Some of them are going to be too labor intensive to solve without any monetary compensation. So, what I will say specifically to business, it's problem, solution, monetize, right? So, you can go out and solve problems. You can be a nonprofit, or you can just be a do-gooder. You don't have to monetize to solve problems. But if you're specifically going down the business route, the entrepreneurial route, it is a problem that is big enough to solve and monetize. Somebody will pay you to take away that pain point. And that's when you know that you have something you're onto as far as a business goes. Social media stuff, branding stuff, right? Everybody's just trying to stand out a little more than the other group. And that's fine. You can have a brand story without specifically being a business, right? So a brand story, we talk about like 12 different archetypes of brands. Your archetype might be the maverick, or I don't remember all of them now. It's been so long since I read that book, but go Google brand archetypes and pick which one you want to be. Like even as a nonprofit or as a community choir or as a high school choir, maybe you want to be the fun one. You just make fun videos on social media. Great. That's great. But if you're going down like specifically an entrepreneurship route, you want to find a problem that enough people have that you can solve that they will pay you to solve.
I love that explanation. I think people are going to be like, have their minds blown by the simplicity of that, but it's so true. I mean, Jen has shared some of these things with McKenna and I as we're talking about the future of the podcast and just like how to continue to make it better and refine what we're doing. And so many of the things that you're saying probably are second nature to you at this point, Jen, but are definitely not to the rest of us. So I just so appreciate you saying all of that. And I think you're right, where the more you can identify what you are doing, the stronger your idea will be, even if that's not in a business place, even if that's just you as a musician walking through this life, figuring out what your goals and dreams are and how you can best serve the people around you and be the best version of you.
Maybe it's not thinking about your choral program yet as a brand, but maybe it's starting to think about yourself as that brand and like how to fix those problems for you that also might impact other educators. Like, do you need a booking system for your office hours so that you don't get as many emails? Just like different ways that you can think about yourself in this capacity too, to help and streamline your time so that you can be better for others and the other things that go on in life.
I love the idea. I mean, absolutely personal, a personal brand, doing personal branding work as a musician or an educator or whoever you are. I think it's a great idea. It's super fun. I've often heard people complain about other people who may have made it bigger than them. And I said, they hustle. Like, you've got to respect the hustle. They built a brand, they put it out there, and they hustled. Maybe they're not as good of a musician as you are, but you got to respect the hustle.
Absolutely. To all of that. I mean, I think you're correct. There are people who are like, oh, well, I could do that better. But what you said earlier, it's all about the execution. They are
Yeah, then
doing
do it. Right. Then go do it.
Then do it.
Yeah.
Oh, now that you have shared some of the um, poignant and clear ways that one can begin their business entrepreneurship style season of life, I was wondering if you might share some of the things that people sometimes fall into traps of. So some of the pitfalls that maybe you've experienced even with Music Spoke, or maybe that you've seen other colleagues or people just throughout your time as a businesswoman. What are some of the pitfalls that you've seen?
Yeah, I think I've talked to you guys about this a little bit before, but um, there's a book called The E-Myth that was written in the 70s. It's since been updated and it's been turned into a system and all of that kind of stuff, but it's still really relevant to today. And one of the things he talks about in the E-Myth is this idea of this entrepreneurial seizure. We wake up one day and we think, I've been doing this job, whatever job it is, for this other person, and I might as well be doing it for myself. And so we go and we start a thing and we do that thing really well. And then we realize like there's a lot more that goes into running a business than just doing the thing. And that's where he breaks out the three sort of different personas of the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur. The technician does the work. So whether that's graphic design or whether that's singing or whether that's knitting socks or like whatever the core business is, right? The technician does the work of the thing. The manager manages not people, but processes, systems and processes. If you get your systems and processes in place, then you don't have to manage people because the technicians just want to do their job. And if you give them the right tools to do their job and the right systems and processes to do the job in the way that you need them to, then it's going to get done. And then you have the entrepreneur who is always creating and innovating and trying to push the business forward so it doesn't stagnate. And I think that a lot of people, we always hear the statistic that most businesses fail within the first 2 years. And I think that's because a lot of people wake up, they have that entrepreneurial seizure, they get into the thick of it, and then they go, oh, no, I'm really not interested in all this manager and entrepreneurial stuff. I just want to be a technician. And that's totally okay. Like the world needs technicians too, right? It's not a normative judgment to say, oh, you didn't make it as an entrepreneur and you went back to being a carpenter for somebody else. Like, no, there's no normative judgment there, right? We need all of those people. And if you get into the thick of it and you realize, oh, okay, there is more to this than just knitting socks or making cabinets or singing songs or whatever it is, and you decide you want to continue your knowledge, then in the beginning, you're wearing all three hats. You are the technician and the manager and the entrepreneur. You are all of it. But at some point, you have to start to break apart the things that you do in each of those categories so that eventually you can bring on board other people to do those things as well. I think in general, everything takes longer and costs more than you think it will. Like it just does, like everything does, whether it's in business or a house renovation or who knows what, everything just takes longer and costs more than you think it will. You have to have staying power. There will be boring times and there will be things that you don't like to do and things you don't want to do, but you still have to do them if you're going to keep running this business and moving this business forward. If you are in love with the problem that you're solving and you stay focused on the problem versus the solution you've built, because that's going to have to change over time. As long as you stay focused on the problem you're solving or noticing other problems around you that are complementary that can be solved at the same time, then that will help keep you moving forward. The biggest thing is like waking up and thinking, I'm just going to go start this thing because I do it already. And then you realize like there's so much more to running a business than just doing the thing. And also, sometimes there's this mindset of like, I'm going to start a business. What do I need? Well, I need a logo. I need business cards. I need a website. I need an office space. I need a phone system. You can put all of this money into all of these trappings that don't actually make you money. They don't actually move your business forward. So instead of waiting till you have all of these things in place, start with a side hustle, something you do in the evenings and the weekends that you can build up to validate your product market fit. Do you have a customer base for this? I've had this conversation with some people in another area in pop music, not classical, about, wanting to do a Netflix special and, getting these people on board. But if only they could do X, Y, and Z first. And I'm like, well, do you have videos on YouTube? Everybody has a cell phone. Do you have a YouTube channel? That's free. Get everybody at the club to record open mic night and post their videos on YouTube. Like, just start somewhere. You don't have to wait for all of these big plans and grandiose things and funding. Just start somewhere and then see where that takes you.
Oh, yes. Jen, I feel like we have to share with our listeners that like you, when you told us this and you were like, yeah, so, there's the technician and the manager and the entrepreneur. And we were like, oh, and we're doing all three together. And you were like, that's normal. That was so encouraging to hear. And I feel like Conductor, in terms of what it is and what it's continuing to become, we've told you it kind of felt like we are doing everything backwards. Like we just had the idea and we just started creating content and we didn't have a logo. We didn't have a website until last summer. I mean, I feel like we're continually playing catch up and trying to determine what the next correct move is. And hopefully one day we can have it all of our ducks lined up in a row. But for now, it's encouraging to hear you say, don't wait, just do it. If you have an idea and you have the willpower to start it, then start it and see what happens. And don't allow the confines of the way other people do things to prevent you from creating something. I mean, that's so powerful.
And
yeah, absolutely. And you said we're still trying to figure out, maybe we'll figure out what our next correct step is. Well, I hope that you've learned by now that there is no next correct step. Everything is all made up. Everybody's figuring out. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody's figuring out as they go. If it works, do it again. If it doesn't work, stop doing it.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Conductor, 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 conductor.
Pavon Publishing is proud to feature outstanding women composers and conductors.
Composer Judith Harrington has created a prolific choral series for youth and treble choirs that includes Fireflies from Japan and Duérmete mi corazón from Brazil.
Shirley McRae has many outstanding arrangements for young choirs, including popular songs like Black Sheep, and Sakura.
Conductor Iris Levine maintains a treble chorus series of medium to advanced works with text by poets from Teasdale to Yeats.
Other composers and authors in the Pavon family circle include Zenaida Stewart-Robles, Catherine Rundis, and Martha Wall. Explore all of these fantastic composers at Pavon Publishing. And we're back.
And look at where you guys have grown. I saw, and this goes back to listening to your customer and giving them what they want. I saw you guys posted you're going to do a K through 12 version.
Yep.
Because clearly you heard from your listeners, that's what they wanted. And you were like, okay, we'll give it to you. I mean, that's brilliant. That's it, right? Listen to your customers and give them what they want. Yeah.
And you do such a nice job, I think, of also making it feel safe to make mistakes, or to change the direction. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it. Like you talking about the 3 different hats and saying, like, if you want to be a technician, like you do all of the things for 2 years and you say, yeah, this isn't for me. That's not bad. How much growth have you just achieved in those 2 years? I mean, I can only speak for Kira and I, but I think just from where we started, we're totally different people in terms of mindset, in terms of like action-oriented approaches and how we collaborate and how we work as a team. And so I'd say, just like Jen said, if you have an idea, just go, just start. Because what are you waiting on?
Right. What are you waiting on? And what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Somebody says, remember that time you tried to start a business and it didn't work? Oh, okay. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. We were down in Memphis over the summer and we went and we toured Stax Records down in Memphis. Stax Records is not in business anymore, but everybody knows who Stax Records is. and what they brought to the music industry. And so it's also a testament to the fact that you can build a company and it does good things and it's influential, but maybe it doesn't exist forever. And that's okay too.
So true. And that doesn't mean that it didn't serve the purpose. You know, it
That's
doesn't
right.
mean that that company didn't have meaning or didn't have influence, like you were saying. And
Yeah, it served the purpose. It solved the problems for its people at the time. And it's historical. It did good things. And we go to the Stax Record Museum tour now, right?
Speaking of like reasons of why you start something and being all of the things, like McKenna and I really started this because we were having these conversations with each other about just how to succeed in this industry and how to do it and how to walk as a woman in this field and just navigate the situations that so frequently occur that are not the most pleasant, but you know, just how to navigate them in the best way possible. And so we were wondering if you would talk about your experiences as a woman in business and give us a little insight on just what your experiences have been like and talk us through your journey.
I think, I mean, being a woman in just about any profession is difficult. Let's be real. You know, when I started listening to your podcast and I told McKenna, I said, I am not a choral conductor, but in every single episode, these women have said things that I have agreed, like have happened to me. I've agreed with, I have seen it happen in business and everywhere. And so it's just, that's frustrating in general. We still have a long way to go as women in male dominated professions, right? Or fields. It just is what it is. I was at a conference recently and I was doing the music spoke spiel, and there was a young man that I was talking to, and he asked me how long I'd been with the company. And I said, oh, well, since the beginning, because I invented it. And he was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, I invented it. Would you ask a man that? I don't know. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. I've pitched to lots of different investors and groups and things. And I kid you not, the first question they always ask me is, are you a singer? It's not about I have detailed 5-year financials and forecasts and projections, and I can talk about my compounded annual growth rate and like all of the things. And the first thing they always ask me is, so are you a singer? And like, no, I'm a founder. I don't necessarily believe that if a man were pitching the same idea, the first question they would ask would be, are you a singer? They might ask, are you a conductor? That might be interesting. But I don't think they would ask, are you a singer? Or they would ask more pertinent business questions. At the same time, so much is out of our control in everything, in life, in business, in music, in everything. There's so much that is just out of our control. I can't spend my time worrying about the things that are not in my control, right? Maybe I got turned down. Maybe I wasn't tall enough. Maybe my hair wasn't blonde enough. Maybe I wasn't a man. Like, who knows? I can't change that. I can't fix that. Or maybe I was just not a good business plan. I don't know. But I think like focusing on the things that you can control, believing that the work that you're doing is good and right, holding on to that to stay the course. I also think it's really, really important to find other women who are in leadership roles, who are entrepreneurs, who are intrapreneurs, who are at the top of their game. And you build your tribe of like wickedly smart, powerful women. And then you have each other as a personal board, as a support network, somebody to complain to, and also somebody to give you suggestions on how to handle a situation and how to move forward. There is strength in numbers. So let's be strong, intelligent, supportive women, and like let's all build each other up together. I think that's made a huge difference for me.
yeah, I think that what you just said, that last package right there, I mean, the whole thing, believing in yourself, staying the course, understanding there are things that are out of your control and that you can't do anything about that. So what are you going to do? You just got to keep going. But finding other women and building your tribe, and especially wickedly smart women that also are yearning and eager, and we're all going to make mistakes. Like sometimes we're all going to make wrong turns or whatever. But I think just knowing that you have those people in your corner, and even if they're not near you, get a text thread together, throw an idea into the chat, because you can't always gather in person, but you can be connected in new ways in this time, which I think that's part of the purpose of Kira and I even starting this podcast. Was we want to stay in touch, and build this network. And if you're listening, you're in the network. Go you. So all of these amazing people that you're hearing from, you can reach out to them too, because that's our goal. Let's build our tribe.
I mean, that's a great goal to have. It really is.
Oh, I just wholeheartedly agree with everything that you just both said. Yeah, just words to live by. I don't think there's anything else that I need to add to that other than just thank you for sharing, Jen. And you're killing it. And we're honored to have you on the podcast and have you as part of our network of people now. And we are inspired by what you are doing every day. So thanks for being the leader in your fields that we are looking up to, because you are that person.
Well, thank you. And I'm excited to be part of your tribe.
And I'll say I've moved a lot in the past couple of years, and I think Kira, you can attest to that. And I know Jen, you and Kurt have had some big moves in your past, and that sometimes when you uproot and restart, it can be really scary to think that like you might lose connection to people in those other places who have been such a critical part of your network, and then B, will you ever find anyone in this new space that can be part of your network? And many of you know I teach at the University of Kansas, and I have to say this network of fierce women in Kansas City area and the art scene that is going on here is sort of rad. I don't really know how else to say it. It's really explosive and beautiful. And I feel grateful to have a finger on the pulse of that. And I'd say, look around you and just reach out and ask people to get coffee or to go to brunch, and know that it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't hurt to make an introduction, and just explore and put yourself in new spaces so that you have the opportunity to also find what's going on if you have just relocated or are trying to maybe get more connected with some of those items in your own area.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Conductor, 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 conductor.
Hey everyone, Gloria here from Call Time Clothing, back again to remind you to check out our newest special edition items from our collaboration with Conductor. Grab a super soft tee for yourself, a family member, teacher, or maybe all of the above. We've truly got something for everyone. Head over to Call Time Clothing today.
And we're back.
So, Jen, you have not only given us so much about the business side, but also some personal things. And we just kind of wanted to ask you one more question related to work-life balance, because that's something that people ask about often when they write into the podcast. How do you balance so many things? Because not only are you a co-founder of this business and have founded other businesses in the past, but you work with your husband, and you have two wonderful children who I know are grown, but they weren't always, and also a dog mom of two. So how do you balance, question mark, if there is any wisdom that you want to share on that, and what might you offer to someone who is maybe struggling in that department right now?
Well, and I will just add, I also have a 5-year-old grandson and a granddaughter on the way due in December. Yeah, my kids are grown. So it's a little bit different. Like I'm not in, Kurt and I, we call it the big middle. The big middle is when you've got the kids and they're going to sports and they're going to music and you're pulled here and there, and like your life is just not your own anymore. We're past the big middle. So that's nice. Also, if anybody's stuck in the big middle right now, I promise you it gets better on the other side. You know what? Work-life balance is a myth. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. Stop reading the blog posts that say that you have to get up at 5 a.m. and eat 30 grams of protein and take a cold shower in order to be the best person you can be. Like, just stop. Just stop. Like, that's all a lie. What works for one person does not necessarily work for another person. Our work and our life it's all part of the same fabric. And sometimes your work is taking more of your time than your quote unquote life. I don't even like those terms. Call it family, call it non-work, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes you have more time to spend, with your family, and you don't have to be as focused on work. And especially, you all know this as musicians. I know this because I'm married to a musician, like, and he's a church musician. So, I mean, Holy Week, I don't even speak to him. Like, I'm not going near him during Holy Week. So I know Christmas and Easter, anything we say, nobody can take that personally. There are just certain times of your life and your career, and especially as musicians, when the show is coming up, the rehearsals are coming up, you're recruiting, but then maybe in the summer you get to take some time off and spend more time relaxing. That's great. Just embrace it. Like, stop trying to fight it. Stop trying to make it artificially balance in some way that it's not meant to do. That's not to say at the same time, you're also speaking to a consummate workaholic. So I've had to set some limits for myself because I will just work and work and work and work and work. So I know that, like, if I don't close my laptop by 9:30 at night, I'm not going to fall asleep because my brain's not going to have time to shut down. Figuring out those types of things for yourself and what you need to do, that's part of self-care. Okay, for myself, I need to stop working by this time and put those boundaries in place. Starting a business with your spouse or significant other is difficult. I know few people who have done it and done it successfully, and it's great, or it can be. I also know those who have not. You need to make sure that you, like, really have a good basis to your relationship first. At the base of it all, you trust that the other person has your best interest at heart, because things can get dicey and have. After we had this idea to start Music Spoke in 2013, and then we got accepted into this little accelerator in the summer of 2014. And I've always been in business of some form, in sales. I've been in banking. I've been in retail. I was a preschool teacher for a few years, so that was a little aside from sales. But even then, I had the cutest, all of my calendars were like so cute. Anyway, graphic design, printing, marketing, all that stuff. So our first week in this accelerator, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, we had a little reception where all, like, the local investors and business people were coming to see what we were doing. And we had to start working on our elevator pitches, right, and try this out and stuff. So Thursday morning, I had a stack of business cards to follow up with. And we were working in a co-working space. So all the other teams were there, other people were there. And so in my mind, I know what I have to do. Well, I need to email follow up with all of these people so that I stay top of mind. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Look forward to speaking with you again. But before I can do that, I need to set up my email domain and my email signature, which also has links to my socials. So I need to make sure I've got my socials set up my email domain, set up my email and my web, signature, my HTML signature. So I'm writing code and doing marketing and setting up. So I know what I need to do today. So I sit down, I put my headphones on, and I start working. We're in there, and then we're working. I'm not listening to choral music, by the way. And we're working. I'm probably listening to Modest Mouse and working. And Kurt is sitting across from me, and he looks up at me, and he starts waving at me, and I pull my headphones on, and I said, What? He said, are you mad at me? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, why are you ignoring me? And I said, I'm not ignoring you. I have this stack of business cards to follow up on this morning, and I can't do that until I make sure my socials are set up, my email domain is set up, my HTML email signature is set up, and then I have to go email them all. So I'm not ignoring you, and I'm not mad at you. I'm trying to get work done. Do you know what you need to do today? So that did not go well. Later on that night, and Kurt and I don't really fight. We just really we don't really fight, but that night was not good. And I just looked at him. I said, look, I'm not going to do this. I am not going to start this business with you if I'm going to feel like this every day. We've learned how to communicate as parents. We've learned how to communicate as spouses. We're going to have to learn how to communicate as business owners. If we can't do that, I'm walking away. I'm done. I'm not doing this. I'm done. So that's how we almost ended on the fourth day of starting our company. Back to the work-life balance thing. I wasn't going to let a company end my marriage, right? Just not worth it. At the same time, I've known other founders who are couples who have said, we put the marriage first. And I'm like, I put the business first. So I'm not always the easiest one to deal with in this relationship. But anyway, it goes back to like, there is no such thing as work life balance. We have this company that allows us the flexibility to travel and do things. And also, we are never actually on vacation because we always have work to do. But that's okay. That's what we've chosen. And that's totally fine for us. That may not be fine for everyone. So
I love you sharing all of that, Jen. I remember you telling us that story for the first time about you having the headphones in, and McKenna was like, yes. And it can be really hard when you do have a loved one in your life that you work with. I mean, McKenna and I started this together. We're sisters, we're best friends. Like, and you're right. I mean, I feel like we still are continuing to figure out the best ways to communicate with each other and be like, hey man, seems like you're not having a good day. Like, that's all right. And I just think it's a constant learning and a constant flexibility that's needed, and that can be really hard. Especially, I'm not a very flexible person. That's really hard for me. I'm really good at my job, so I'm flexible when I need to be, but you know, personally and just in terms of having a plan and a schedule, like I really enjoy just having everything lined up in a certain way, and that's just not how life is sometimes. And McKenna is so good at like knowing that and reading that in me and being like, whoa. And you know, I think you do need to figure out how to navigate that relationship. And I think even those listeners that we have who are, you know, teaching in a high school, and maybe you're not involved in a business, and maybe you're single, but you have to figure out how to work with your coworkers. And that's not always the most pleasant. And sometimes it means being like, okay, here are the things I know about this person. Here's what I need. I need to tell them what I need from them in a clear way that is kind. And also I need to be like, here are my boundaries, and you cannot talk to me at work during this time because I have to get work done. So I think there was a lot of wisdom in what you just said, and also a lot of vulnerability in being able to say like, yeah, this is hard. And it's worth it. And we decided that it was worth it. And I think that conversation is the most important.
Agreed. And also, I think all of your wisdom, Jen, applies to expanding your team. And, you know, Kira and I think, have now figured out, okay, how do the two of us work together? You know, obviously there's still patches where we're like, oh yeah, one person is busier than the other. And, you know, things are, what is balance, like you just said. But now our team is expanded to 4. And now it's like, okay, how do we navigate that? And that's something that we're constantly working on, you know, trying to keep that communication open. And like you said, be open and honest and understanding, and clear's kind. But I appreciate, like Kira said, all that you just shared. I mean, there's so much. I feel like I'm going to come back to this episode and just like listen through it again and again and glean new things.
Same here. I feel like, Jen, also, we didn't even ask you this, but for our listeners, because we just dove in and we love you and wanted to hear immediately about all of your advice, can you talk about Music Spoke? Can you give us your elevator pitch?
Yes.
Yes.
I can. I have several, but it's going to be more advice.
Great.
But you guys keep talking about like and I appreciate it. You know, you keep saying we love the advice you're giving and all this stuff. I also want to say there are lots of people out there that will give a lot of advice. And at the end of the day, advice is just data. You get to decide what you do with that data. So you could be saying all these things that resonate with you, and somebody else could be hearing this saying, this is nonsense. Like, we have to have this schedule and we have to have this balance. We have to, okay, fine, right? This is just my data. And at the end of the day, you get to decide what you do with that data. My elevator pitch changes, but like Etsy for composers is probably the easiest one. So sometimes I find people who don't know what Etsy is, so I might switch it up to like an Amazon or Uber. They get iTunes, they get Amazon if they don't get Etsy. We are building the world's largest marketplace for artist-owned sheet music. So the problems that I mentioned in the beginning that Kurt and other composers faced, traditional publishers take copyrights away. So composers no longer own or control their music. They can't even write an arrangement of their own work without permission from their publisher. They did this in exchange for 8 to 10% royalties, less if there's a living lyricist. And there's no way to verify the accuracy or know who's purchasing and performing your music. So what we did was we built a solution to that problem. We are a marketplace. We are not a publisher. And so we are a digital marketplace where composers can upload their scores and sell directly to the musicians and the music educators who purchase and perform their music. We are actually, I'm going to get a little jargony here, so stop me if I need to clarify anything, but we are actually a dual-sided marketplace. Did not know this going in, by the way. Just had this idea. But we are actually a dual-sided marketplace. So it means we have two sets of customers. We bring buyers and sellers together. So our composers are our sellers, and you are our buyers, musicians, music educators, singer, performers, all of that. And so when we first started down this, we were solving problems for composers. And then we realized, like, hey, it's one thing to solve problems for the composers, but if nobody's there to buy the music, what have we done? So in a marketplace, there's always the chicken and egg sort of scenario. So then what we had to do was go and talk to a bunch of choir directors and find out what their problems were. How can we solve those problems and give them what they need? And overwhelmingly, we heard from choir directors, they wanted to be able to see the entire piece before they purchased it. So not just the first 2 pages and the last page, because they're going to buy it and something bad's going to happen in the middle, then their kids aren't going to be able to perform it. They wanted to be able to hear the entire piece, not a MIDI recording, but a live recording. And so they could hear how it sounds in a human voice. And they didn't want to have to wait. They didn't want things to be on back order, out of stock, right? Or to have to order something from Europe that gets shipped and then 6 weeks later and however many hundreds of dollars later gets here. They wanted access to the music. And so that's what we did. So when we first started, so we are actually in our 10th year of business now. Thank you. We launched in 2014. So in June of 2024, it will be our 10th anniversary. And believe it or not, like when we launched, there weren't other sites that had live recordings up. There weren't other sites that had full perusal scores up. And so this is like just kind of some of the stuff the technology exists. It just hadn't been applied to this particular segment of the choral sheet music publishing industry, right? So that's what we did when we built Music Spoke. We solved the composer's problems. All of it is artist-owned sheet music. The composer retains their copyrights. We will never take IP. We will never take intellectual property away from our composers. That's just one of our founding core beliefs. We don't want to build a business based on holding on to other people's intellectual property. And as an aside to that, one of the stories Kurt always tells is that he has pieces that are dead now, right? That he got published early on. They sold, but not so great. And the publisher is not going to reprint them, not going to make them available digitally, and not going to give the copyright back to Kurt. So that piece is just dead. It's just dead and gone. Maybe you got to perform it once 30 years ago, and maybe you didn't, but it's gone now, right? So we're just never going to take that intellectual property away from composers. So they retain their copyrights. Music Spoke keeps a 30% transaction fee, and all of the rest of the money goes back to the artist. This is a difficult business model. This is a proven business model at scale. If you look at Etsy, if you look at eBay, if you look at Kickstarter, if you look at Indiegogo, this business model is a proven business model. It works at scale, which means getting bigger, right? Having more stuff on the platform. And then every time there's a sale on our platform, the composer gets an email that says this person bought your music, right? So you can email, as the composer, you can email that person and say, hey, thanks for buying my music. Tell me more about your performance. Do you want to schedule a Skype rehearsal with your students, right? Building connections, whether it's, this is an aside, but I'm veering off of my elevator pitch path, but whether it's face-to-face building relationships or digitally building, everything is about building relationships, right? I'm not here to sell you things. I'm here to build relationships with you. I'm here to help you facilitate building those relationships. So that's the composer side. And then on the buyer side, the conductor side, we have full perusals of every score. We have live recordings of almost every piece, unless there's a premiere coming up and where you need to time it and get it out there sooner. So everything on every single piece we carry is available for immediate digital download. We do offer print on demand. So for people who need physical copies, we do offer print on demand by purchase order for institutions. But that's the basis of Music Spoke and the problems we solve for both sides of the marketplace. And when we first launched, we had 16 composers and I think like 52 scores on the platform. Now we have almost 300 composers and over 3,000 scores available on the platform. The greatest feeling in the world, I think, is the first time you get a sale from somebody and you don't know who they are. Because when you first start the business and you start launching and you kind of prime that pipeline and people know what you're doing and they're coming in because they know you, they have relationships, they have contacts with you or the composer. And then one day you get the sale and you see the email and you're like, who is that person? I don't know. Do you know that person? I don't know that person. Like somebody that you don't know bought something from you. That's like the best feeling in the world.
Absolutely, Jen. And if you haven't checked out Music Spoke, you just heard the elevator pitch. You definitely should. It's worth your time. Support living artists. The dead don't need it. One of the many slogans from Music Spoke. They've got amazing merch if you haven't seen their booths at conferences. So just a shameless plug to go check them out.
Thanks.
And they're just wonderful people with a really good mission. As somebody who has a lot of friends who are, emerging composers, like this is just so what the world needs. So thank you for continuing to provide for all of us. We appreciate it.
I think some of the work that we've done that we're most proud of. I haven't done the totals yet for this year, but as of the end of last year, we've put over $500,000 directly in the pockets of artists. That's a big deal to us. We've started our digital series. So just like you might have the Joe Michael Shivey series on Walton that Kurt is on, we have series on Music Spoke. So Sandra Snow has a Mirabai series. Derek Fox has his Icon series. He's bringing a lot of music from Black South African composers, which is really cool. We have a series with the Choral Arts Initiative in LA. We have a series with Charles Bruffy here in Kansas City. And we actually have a few more series in the works, some children's chorus series. So stay tuned for those.
Yes.
So we're excited to launch some more series. Also trying to listen to our customers and add more of what they're looking for in terms of repertoire and just giving them what they ask for. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We could talk to Jen all day, but we've got to know Jen about these Fast 5 closing questions. So, Kira, why don't you kick it off?
Tell us either your favorite Music Spoke octavo or composer, and then what is your favorite regular person band or artist?
Okay, well, I wasn't going to plug my husband just because he's my husband, but then I remember that he wrote a piece for me. So if you write a piece for me, I'll plug it. So there is a piece on Music Spoke called Prayer for Peace. There's a prayer at the end of the Saturday morning Torah service that I really like, and it includes the phrase, "We have not come into being to hate or destroy. We've come into being to praise, to labor, and to love." And he had one of our Israeli friends do a new translation of it, and then he said it, and he dedicated it to me and to Charles. And so I have to say that's my favorite because he wrote it for me. Band-wise, though, I have been listening to The Head and the Heart a lot lately because they're coming in concert, and I'm going to go see them in Lawrence next month. I have seen Jane's Addiction in 3 different states and 3 different decades. I've seen Modest Mouse 1, 2, in 3 different states. I saw Depeche Mode 3 times, but that was back in high school.
Love.
But they are touring this year, so I might get to see them again. I don't know. We'll see.
I love how eclectic that answer became. That was fabulous. So Jen, what is one misconception about you?
I think you guys know what it is. I am not a singer.
She's not a singer, everybody.
No.
But what is one word to describe you as a music entrepreneur?
I think as a music entrepreneur or any kind of entrepreneur, honestly, is just curious.
Mm.
I think it's important to stay curious, and not get complacent, right? Because if you stay curious, then you continue to notice the problems around you and what's working and what's not working, and also look for ways to innovate within your own company.
Jen, what is one professional blooper that you would be willing to share with our listeners?
I have three. So my first company, my marketing company that I started in 2011, I was so excited. I had a logo, I had business cards, and I went to my first chamber function as my own company. And I went around handing out my cards and introduced myself to people. And this one person, I don't remember who he was, looked at my card and he looked at, and then he flipped it over and it's got my logo and my business name on one side. And you flip it over and it says Jennifer Rosenblatt, customer champion on the other side, because that was the title I gave myself, customer champion. And they were nice too. They were like a 16 point with like a silk laminate finish. Like they were nice cards. And finally he stops flipping over and he looks at me and he goes, "What do you do?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I'm a customer champion. He said, "Yeah, but what do you do?" I had not put anything on the card about graphic design, printing, promotional product, nothing about what I did. I was just Jennifer Rosenblatt, customer champion. And this goes back to, if you are not embarrassed by your first product, then you have waited too long to launch. I was like, oh, and I ordered 2,500 of them, by the way. I was so excited. Oh, yeah. I had a big old box of 2,500. In Music Spoke, so first sticker we ever made for Music Spoke. Second, the first one was just a logo. It was for our first national conference was in Salt Lake City in 2015. And we didn't even know if we were going until like 2 weeks before, because we didn't know if we had enough money to go. Let's be real. And then we did, and we registered, and we did all this stuff last minute. And so I made some like square, like some rounded rectangle circles that had the support living artists, the dead ones don't need it, phrase on there. And so we got a little stack of stickers, made it to Salt Lake City, set up. I slapped it on the iPad, took a picture of it on the iPad, posted it to Instagram, come to booth, whatever, and come get your stickers. Excuse me. And a friend of mine who was not music related, just in the startup world, saw my Instagram and texted me and said, "Hey, Jen, I love the sentiment of what you're doing. You have a typo in your sticker." And I was like, "What?" And I went back and looked at it, and it said artisits. Support living artisits. The dead ones don't need it.
Oh my God.
Mhm. This is a good rule of thumb to remember: 2 sets of eyes on everything. The other one I was going to tell you, which I'm sure you guys, everybody will appreciate, when we do national conferences, Kurt is usually running around plays organ and piano and runs all over and does stuff. And I've since started bringing my sister-in-law along, and our composers come work the booth, and that's helpful too. And I know like how to talk to people and what to say now. It's when they ask me for specific rep that. So this one particular conference, I think it might have been here in Kansas City in 2019. And for whatever reason, I was alone. I got cornered. Somebody was looking for repertoire, and I was like, well, and I just saw the first cover I saw, I was like, well, we have this great piece by Sean Ivory called Chance On. And he looked at me like right there. I knew my cover was blown. "You mean shuffle?" And I was like, I don't know, but it's by Sean Ivory. Here, you take it. It's free. Take it.
Oh, that's amazing. Jen, well, first of all, those are fantastic bloopers, and thank you for sharing. Also, I thought you were going to be like, I can't, like, Kurt would leave me alone with these people. And I was like, I know what you mean. Like, you're at conference. It's the most, like, high strung, energetic. All the choral directors are there at a national conference. Like, the energy is wild. So I understand not wanting to be at the booth alone. And we salute you.
Yeah, well, that part of it I love. Like, I can be a professional, like, just booth attender. Like, you can hire me to run your booth.
Queen.
Happy to do it.
Queen.
Yes.
Not a
Booth
tender.
queen.
Booth queen.
And I also, like, I try to make it feel Hamish, feel homey. Like, I want people to feel comfortable there.
Mm-hmm.
Come home
Yeah.
to Music Spoke, which is why we set up chairs and we have coffee and cookies and Then we have the fun stuff and the photo booth and all of that. But I just want it to be a place where people feel comfortable to come and connect or sit down and charge your phone or,
Yeah.
just have a place to stash your bag where everything is not quite so transactional all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm actually really not there to sell people music. I'm really just there to build relationships and connections with people.
Amazing.
I love it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, all right, Jen, we have one more question for you. What is a favorite musical memory?
Favorite musical memory? Well, okay. I guess it'll kind of count. So, sticking with the conference theme, I think it might have been 2018. I don't know, 2017 or 2018. KCDA, Kansas Choral Directors Association, had Dr. Issei Barnwell as a presenter, as a headliner. And I, in general, am not a fangirl of much, but I cried when I met her. Growing up in Tampa, we had this great public radio station, WMNF, and they used to have the women's show on Saturdays. I used to listen to the women's show all the time when I was a teenager, and that's when the first time I heard Sweet Honey in the Rock, the original group, and just fell in love with them. And I remember we'd moved to Dallas for Kurt to do his master's degree, and then we also had our second child there. And Sweet Honey and the Rock were coming in concert, and I had enough money to buy a concert ticket or to feed my family. So I had to unfortunately feed my family and not go see them in concert. But then I actually got to meet her in person at KCDA, however many decades later. And so that was amazing. I mean, just listening to her talks, watching her interact with people. She was talking about listening, to the stories around you and all of that. It was just, yeah. I still go back and watch the videos on my phone sometimes.
That's amazing. And what a person to meet. I mean, really, such an inspirational figure for so many. I know for Kira and I, for sure. Jen, I mean, this has just been fabulous. I don't really know if there's another word to say. It's just been fabulous. And every time we get to speak with you, it is a gift. And I agree with you that at the end of the day, advice is just data. And I tell that to my graduate students too. When you go home, collect it and then put it in the sieve and do the strainer situation. And there'll be things that stick and there'll be things that leave. But advice from you is beyond data, my friend. So at least for Kira and I, it sticks. And now we just have to decide what we do with it. And we're just so grateful that you were willing to share your wisdom and your data points with so many out there who I think will be taking the entrepreneurial world by storm in just a few years. So this is awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me. I always enjoyed talking with you. And I look forward to seeing what you guys build with your media empire.
Oh, thank you, Jen. You are so wonderful, and I learn something from you every time that we speak. So I'm so thrilled that you were able to come today. And for our listeners, please check out musicspoke.com. Go to their website, look at all the fabulous composers that are featured on there. Maybe buy some music. I don't know, just browse around. And also follow them on social media. And you can find a link to them on our website because they are a sponsor. And please check out our social media. We are conduct.her.pod on Instagram and conduct.her on Facebook and TikTok. So please follow us, and thank you so much for listening.
And one final shameless plug that if you go on Instagram and you use stickers, if you search Music Spoke, there are some amazing options there. And Conductor also has some stickers under that brand. So feel free to stick us with your stickers.
Thank you for listening. This has been Conductor.
This episode was engineered and mixed by Mary Hannah Klontz, with intro and outro music by Jonathan Martin and ad music by Kate Krellin.
Discover more resources at conducther.com.